What a day. What a day here at the Voice of College Football. My goodness. All sorts of rumors and projections out there concerning college football's landscape going forward. Hope you joined us for our Buckeyes live show. I know it's Michigan fans here. I know Michigan fans, you don't want to check in on Ohio State football. I get it, but many of you do. And we had a heck of a show at 1:30 Eastern time, so check out that Buckeyes live stream on the Ohio State channel. We had Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm join us. And of course, we talked expansion and realignment in college football and the latest with Ohio State. We do the same right here every Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern time. For Michigan football, we typically have Des and Dre with us, but both for different reasons will not be able to join us today. So you are stuck with me for 60 Michigan football talk. I've got a couple of items lined up for the discussion, but of course, you ultimately produce the show. So we'll leave your comments and questions there in the live chat. We will get to them. And again, a huge day here at the Voice of College Football. Ohio State Live's in the books. Michigan Live right now, followed by Florida State Live at 6 Eastern, Miami Live at 7. And then we will have a call-in show with all the various projections and rumors concerning college football realignment and expansion. Most notably, Clemson, Florida State, of course, is going to be at the forefront of our topic the next hour in the Florida State show. And then in the 8 o'clock Eastern time call-in show on the main channel, we were talking primarily ACC, Pac-12 in discussions to get together, form an alliance. We've heard that term before, form an alliance and try to stabilize their situation. But Michigan, feel good, Michigan fans. Unlike many of your counterparts across the nation who root for other teams, let's say you're right now a Stanford fan, Washington State fan, Cal fan. We could go down the list of a number of teams. And even some close to elite programs or former elite programs like Florida State, Miami, not necessarily knowing their fate, their future, whether that's in the SEC or the ACC. So Michigan fans, feel good at least about your future. Your future standing seems to be about as secure as it possibly can be. I also want to look at Michigan recruiting. Earlier this week, I was on Michigan Podcast with Steve Days. Please check out that episode. You will see Steve go on a complete rant about his displeasure concerning Michigan recruiting and where it stands right now, 51st in the nation. And we say this all the time, the rating, the ranking means nothing or next to nothing in the summer. But when there are players off the table that you have competed against the likes of Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, and others directly and lost out on those commitments, the board narrows. And it is narrowed for Michigan. So we discussed that on Michigan Podcast. Again, you got to check out Steve Dace's rant on Michigan Podcast. And also then I provided my take that was released a couple days ago on Michigan Podcast. And we'll talk a little bit further about the Michigan recruiting efforts and disappointments to date for the 2023 cycle. And also I want to run through the Big Ten odds, championship odds that were released earlier by Sports Illustrated. Jumping in the chat. Eric's on the line. Good to see you, Eric, as well as Mike. Mike's a Michigan fan. Eric, an Oregon fan, always supporting. Appreciate you being here, Eric. George, still embarrassed for Michigan. I mean, at least you could have given Georgia a game. How embarrassing. Similar score to the Florida-Georgia game, I believe. All right, Shadyville 03, go blue. Need more Caldwell. Good to see you, Cowbell. I'm sorry, need more Cowbell. Mississippi State fan here as well. Good to see all of you. Yes, George, we've had close to 1 million watching here and only 4 likes. I'm showing 21 on the line, but I think it's closer to 1 million. If we keep going with this expansion talk, our main channel is going to hit 1 million views this month. My goodness, we appreciate everybody watching our videos and taking part in the live streams. We have certainly feasted off of the rumor mill and the big news in college football. As Eric says here, ACC and Pac-12 loose arrangement is a joke. So again, we're going to delve a little bit further into that. Of course, this is a Michigan show. We're going to address that later tonight, 8 Eastern on the main channel. Didn't we learn anything? Didn't these two conferences learn anything, the ACC and the Pac-12, from the loosely arranged, let me get my junctions in order, loosely arranged alliance from a year ago? Mark would love to discuss negative aspects of NIL and how it could affect team dynamic. Will players have issues with incoming players making what they are? I made that comment recently. We do so many shows on so many channels, I can't keep track. But I made that same comment to somebody just the other day because we haven't heard anything yet. There's been nothing posted on social media to give us that indication. We also know that if you look at NFL rosters, so pull up an NFL roster, the salaries are public record. You can pull up an NFL roster, and if you know that NFL team well, you're going to see a number of players who make more money than players that are better based on a variety of circumstances. And, I know, we had Mike Vanderjagt, the NFL's most consistent and accurate kicker in the history of the league. We had him on the main channel, that's right, on Sunday, and we were discussing NIL and the locker room dynamic. That was one of the first things I thought of as well. Everybody seems to be pulling in the same direction. Sure, some guys have aspirations to play at the next level, and there's always inherent temptation to be selfish and to play for self, to be greedy, to be selfish. We all have it in us to a degree. But you would think that this amplifies the probabilities that that is going to be an issue on certain teams, or at some point, all teams. But again, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, any professional sport has to deal with the same issue. And does it affect the team? Of course, it affects every team, but it affects those teams to different degrees. So it's managed and controlled and fueled in a positive direction by some, and then the dysfunctional teams cannot manage it, and it's to the detriment of the team. So to answer your question, will it have an impact? Yes. How much of an impact? That's the question. That depends on the effectiveness of the leadership in the locker room, both by the players and by the coaches. Shadyville 03, to quote the great Bo Schembechler. Can I give it a Bo Schembechler? The team, the team, the team. I forget the rest of the quote. I'll have to go back and memorize the quote and give you my best Bo. That was my best in the moment. The team, the team. Loose Pap, good to see you, man. Michigan will win 25 national championships before the century is over. Adam Rittenberg said Notre Dame is still considering joining the Big Ten. Let's hope so. So you as Michigan fans, of course, you can't stand Notre Dame. They're on the list. The list involves Ohio State and Michigan State, of course, but Notre Dame's on the list as well. And I'm sure all of you have a different pecking order. Ohio State, Michigan State, Notre Dame. So Notre Dame is in the top 3 of hatred by Michigan fans. But looking out for the conference, what is best for the conference? Notre Dame to the Big Ten would be enormous. Enormous for the Big Ten's future. Elvis Nation, Brent, thank you so much for the... I gave it a go. That was not rehearsed. However, had I rehearsed I could have rehearsed as much to prepare to deliver the Bo Schembechler impersonation as Austin Butler put into preparing for Elvis, and it would have been just as bad. I would have done just as bad as I just did. So I can't excuse that that was just off the cuff. Can I do impressions of other coaches? I am no impressionist. There's been a handful of people in life that I've been able to impersonate, but I typically do much better if I just hear them. If I just hear them and can instantly have that facial expression or that vocal pattern in my mind, and then I can turn around and do it immediately, then I've got a better shot. One Scoop Jones here. Good to see you. Dave, good to see you as well. All the regulars in the chat talking Michigan football. Let's look at the current Big Ten championship odds that were just released by SI. If they're still there. So what we have is Ohio State's listed as an enormous favorite. And if you understand the odds, basically what these numbers are telling you, that if you've got $100 that you want to bet on this in particular. So this is the listing of the odds of each Big Ten team to win the Big Ten championship. And this was released by SI earlier today. And this is as listed by Bet on College Football at SI Sportsbook. So you're going to see similar odds elsewhere. And basically what this is telling us is that, again, it's all based on a $100 bet, basically. All the numbers in the pluses means that those teams are underdogs. The odds are against them winning the championship. And obviously, if you total all of this, there should be everybody should total as a long shot, because only 1 out of 14 of these teams are going to win the Big Ten championship. But somebody is going to win the Big Ten championship. So, for example, if you bet on Michigan, if you bet $100 on Michigan to win the Big Ten championship, and the Wolverines, like 2021, and I wonder what the odds were going into 2021, because I'm guessing that they were longer for Michigan football to win the Big Ten last year than they are this year at plus 800. So if you lay down $100 for Michigan and they win the Big Ten title again, you net $800. You get $900 in return. You net $800 and on down the line. The only exception is there at the top, Ohio State, minus 250. That means you have to put down $250 to net $100 victory. So you have to be awfully sure that the Buckeyes are going to win the Big Ten championship to lay down the $250 just to win $100. And so somebody do the math for me. If we stay consistent with a $100 bet, if you lay down 100 and Ohio State wins, I believe you make $40. So think about the difference in odds that they're giving us here between Michigan and Ohio State. They are saying that a $100 bet is going to net you $40 if Ohio State pulls through and wins the Big Ten championship versus 800. That's monumental. And really, they're giving Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa a relatively decent chance of winning the Big Ten title. Michigan State, I've got to think that the teams in the East in particular, because of how strong, this is telling us a few things. Michigan State is probably higher regarded than that number would indicate at plus 2,500. But because Michigan State plays Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, the three favorites in the conference, that drags down Michigan State's number. Also, keep in mind that the top three teams listed being in the Eastern Division, that tells us a whole lot as well. Basically, that is telling us that the Vegas odds proclaim that the Eastern Division is better and most likely will again win the Big Ten championship game, which has been the case now for 8 consecutive years, 2014 through 21, 8 consecutive wins for the Big Ten Eastern Division. But those are the betting odds if you have any interest in such. Shadyville does like Michigan to cover its win total of 9.5. So there you got 9.5, meaning Michigan needs to win 10 for you to win your bet. Otherwise, a 9 would be the under on that play. And Michigan, of course, goes up against Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State. No difficult non-conference games. They've got a home date against Nebraska. They also play at Iowa. That's tricky. Slow Jammin' James is not happy with Michigan football and some of its recent social stances, which I can certainly understand. Dave, don't bet on Michigan to win the Big Ten. I would not bet on any of them against the field. Yeah, that's a difficult call because to take any of them against the field and then Ohio State, the payoff just isn't much of anything. Eric is saying, according to whoever that is, Ohio State's at minus 170, so a bit less of a favorite there, but still a heavy favorite. Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan lower at plus 1,000. So if you bet $100 on Michigan there, and that's another bit of a novice betting tip I have for you. If you want to make some money, you would basically join a number of accounts, have accounts on a number of sites, and then, as Eric is telling us, let's say you like Michigan to win the Big Ten title. Well, do you want to risk $100 and win 800, or do you want to risk $100 and make $1,000? Well, then you would go to this site to lay down your $100 bet. One Scoop John, Michigan way too close to Penn State for my liking. We won the whole thing last year and improve on offense in 22. Improve on offense. Yeah, the skill position players at Michigan, I got to say, maybe the best that we've seen, the best we've seen since the early to mid 2000s, about 15 to 20 years ago, when we saw the Chris Perrys and the Mike Harts and the Braylon Edwards, on and on and on, the receiver core for Michigan from around 1990 or the late 80s all the way through to about 2005 or beyond that. Mario Manningham, Michigan's wide receiver play and its NFL production at wide receiver, I don't think it's enough credit or recognition during that 15 to 20 years. Rob, the days are starting to feel closer and closer until college football kickoff. I believe we are only, I saw 60 days to the official opener, which means 53 days. Take off 7, 53 days to the week 0 games. All right, folks, do you want to talk expansion and realignment? We can talk Michigan recruiting as well. And again, we're usually joined by my guy, Desmond Upshaw and Dre Artis on our Michigan show each and every week right here, Wednesday, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Appreciate you being here. And we are going to, starting next week, break down position by position. We're going to go through the entire team, every position on offense and on defense as well for the Maize and Blue. Caffeine, appreciate you being here. Go Blue, hit that like button, y'all. We've got a Michigan channel here. Our aim is to produce Michigan content for you each and every day. So we've got this live show that we do every Wednesday. Also, for example, I've got a record scheduled tomorrow, Thursday, with Justin Rowe from Blue by 90 podcast. So what we're doing at that point is we're recording, and we'll have more segments available to you starting on Thursday from Justin Rowe, Blue by 90. Ed's asking about Michigan recruiting. The only thing I can say right now, Ed, is Michigan is 51st. And normally I wouldn't make a big deal about that. But the concerning portion of that is that the season is going to start in less than 2 months. And once the season kicks in and Michigan starts winning, most likely 9 to 10 games, that's going to help. However, the players that Michigan has pursued, it's lost. It's lost to, most notably, Notre Dame. A lot of recruiting battles between Notre Dame and Michigan and others in the mix, but Notre Dame and Michigan has not been winning these recruiting battles with Marcus Freeman and his staff. And so it's not so much, for me, the number 51 ranking in recruiting. It's about the players that Michigan has pursued and offered that they continue to miss on. Keep this in mind, that Michigan's top player committed in 2023 is Cole Cabana. According to 247 Sports Composite, he is the number 233 player in the class, in the entire class, Cole Cabana. Ohio State has received commitments from 13 players that have a better recruiting ranking than Michigan's top player. Michigan is going to be signing somewhere between, you would think, 20 and 23 players. They currently have 8 hard commits. I gave them too much credit with a 51st ranked recruiting class. They're at 53. So Cole Cabana, really good player out of Michigan, 13th rated player at his position, 3rd rated player in the state of Michigan. Cole Cabana, he's the top player. He's the only top 300 player. Now, Samaj Bridgman, we posted a profile video on him this week. He's the linebacker out of Philadelphia. He's just outside the top 300. So basically you can state he's a top 300 player. He just committed on July 1st. And there's some really good players in this class. But of course, the quarterback situation around CJ Carr, a legacy, and Dante Moore, not looking like those guys are going to pull through and sign at Michigan. And then on top of that, much is going to happen here, obviously, with 8 hard commits, and they're going to be in the low 20s, so they're probably going to get another 14 to 15 commitments that eventually sign. But I don't see a whole lot changing with this recruiting class. They have 2 4-stars out of the 8. So we're going to find out a whole lot more when we talk to Justin Rowe. On Thursday. Need more Cowboy. Mark, your guest on team evaluation was enlightening. Well, guess what? We're going to have it back on at 7 o'clock Eastern time tonight. He's going to be on our Miami channel. A lot of talk concerning Miami, Clemson, Florida State to the SEC. Or on the other hand, maybe the ACC and the Pac-12 get together. They've got this loose agreement and a lot of talk surrounding that. But Tony Altimore is going to join us, strategist consultant on the Miami channel at 7 Eastern time. He's got just some amazing research on fan base sizes, the dynamics concerning those fan bases, also the market size for television for the various college football programs, their academic rankings, which a lot of people slough off, but you can't in the Big Ten. That's why Stanford's so attractive. And if you caught my video that I posted on the main channel, Notre Dame's the number one target. There's no question about that. That isn't even worth a discussion. D-Rock Irish, appreciate you being here. Notre Dame is the number one target. Notre Dame is the number one commodity in college football that's out there right now. So that is without question. There's a gap after Notre Dame. But as the Big Ten continues to look at the Pac-12, even though Oregon's a better football brand currently and has been, and it's a better team, a better program, all of that over Stanford. Stanford is my selection as number 2. I'm the Big Ten. I'm going after, first and foremost, Notre Dame and Stanford. And if I can reel in Oregon and Washington, I find it interesting that the Big Ten has held them at arm's length, Washington and Oregon. I don't think that's a smart move, because while they're holding them off, the SEC could jump in. Yeah, the SEC, it seems ridiculous bringing in 2 teams from the Northwest, but that talk's out there. And then certainly the Big 12. If I'm the Big 12, and again, please check out the videos I posted, because I substantiate all this with numbers, logic, metrics, a lot of different categories, that if I'm the Big 12, my top targets are Oregon and Washington. I roll out the red carpet, and I let them know that the Big Ten is treating them like crap, like second-class citizens, and I go after Washington and Oregon, and then on down the line with the Arizona schools and Utah and Colorado. And the Big 12 can't combat the SEC and the Big Ten from a quality standpoint. There's just not enough quality out there, and the top-end quality that's out there, the top-end quality that is out there is not going to the Big 12, and it's obviously starts with Notre Dame. So the Big 12 can combat that with quantity that is decent quality. You just don't grab whomever, UNLV, to come to your football conference. Eric, thank you so much for that. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you letting people know those videos were excellent. Thank you so much for that. Eric and I with a bit of a disagreement the other day, and I appreciate Eric's class beyond belief, his class in supporting the channel here. The channels all over the place. Eric, an Oregon fan, here he's on the Michigan show. Moorman USA, appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. Hello, Mark. You do great work, sir. Thank you for that. I last offered commentary during the Colin Kaepernick spring practice debacle. Sorry for my lousy disposition that afternoon. Now the dumpster fire in recruiting. Love me some Harbaugh. I said this with Steve Dace on Michigan podcast the other day. It doesn't surprise me that Michigan is behind the NIL curve. Michigan's a conservative outfit. And when I say conservative, that's not from a political standpoint. I mean, they are conservative, meaning tentative and slower to act. Don't want to make any bold moves that are going to be missteps. And that's usually wise. Usually wise. However, once Michigan announced, and let's keep in mind that this is the university and the sports program that was the first in college football, in college athletics, to sign an apparel deal. So they were out in front of it. When was that? The late 80s, early 90s with Adidas. But the reputation, much like the Big Ten, is to be conservative. And because Michigan has a higher mindset of academic importance, priorities, and that, again, I applaud. I applaud that. That I expected Michigan to be behind in NIL. However, they put together this collective called the Victors. So they announced that back in January or February. And then they also teamed up with the outfit. I can't come up with the name. I think it's Brander, the Brander Group, about tying the Block M logo, the brand that is international. Michigan's got an argument as being the most internationally recognized college brand in the United States. Internationally recognized. And so when all of that went down here in the last 3 to 4 months, I thought, well, Michigan's on top of this, and they are going to be able to leverage all that booster money. All that booster money. Michigan has a high turnout of not just high-level graduates, but graduates that go on to run companies, to be CEOs, to be not just CEOs, because there's only so many of those guys out there and ladies, but also just executive types status within Fortune 500 type companies. That I thought, okay, well, if they're jumping on NIL, then they're going to be able to pull all these resources and be in good shape. But they're not recruiting like it. And again, I don't exactly know the reason for that. I was on Michigan podcast, as I mentioned the other day. Steve Dace believes that it's very much NIL related, and he just didn't make the assumption, okay, Michigan's not recruiting well. They must not be, and they're coming off a Big Ten championship, and they've got everything that they've got going for them in spades, and they're not recruiting well, so it must be NIL related. No, he had specifics lined up of strong indicators as it being NIL related. So what's going to happen here is Michigan is going to see itself behind, and it's probably somewhat too late to do much about it between now and National Signing Day, to where they're going to be able to grab and flip commits, because as I mentioned off the top, many of these commits have committed to places like Notre Dame, in which you don't anticipate them decommitting and flipping. You can't count on that. So I will say this, that maybe it's going to take one substandard recruiting class to show Michigan that it needs to get its head. I will stop there and just say in the game, get the head in the game, and catch up to 2022 and be on board, which, again, I thought that there were strong indicators that Michigan was in the NIL game and a strong participant. But recruiting at number 53 in the country, I would normally, again, if this was Alabama, I'd say not concerned. They're going to be in the top 3 at the end. But it's more about who's been on the board that Michigan has lost. Michigan has lost outside of 2 players, and you could argue technically one every top 300 player they've missed on. And of course, the 2 quarterback misses are going to bring a lot of negative attention to all of this. So maybe Michigan, let's say they finish with the 27th ranked class in the country. That seems inconceivable. Jim Harbaugh has always been in that 8 to 12 range during his tenure at Michigan. So he's working on like his 8th recruiting class, maybe 9. And he's always been between 8 and 12. And then suddenly they win a Big Ten championship. They beat Ohio State in their rankings 27. That might be the slap in the face that Michigan needs to say, okay, this isn't working. We can't rest on our loyal laurels. We can't. Has anyone ever looked up that? What is that? They're resting on laurels. What are laurels? I don't know. They're some type of credentials, probably. But Michigan cannot rest on those and compete. Recruiting is still a grind, and it is still about relationships. It's about recruiting. It's about having a program in place that's already well recognized as being a winner. It's about the grind, just working your rear ends off, evaluating players, traveling to talk to them in person, to bring them on campus, to do all the things. So it's just not like let's bring these kids on campus and have a good time and show them around. No, there is a lot of planning and preparation that goes into that. Recruiting's a grind. It is the biggest grind in sports. So you got to work hard. Your staff's got to be willing to work hard. Well, based on what they did in the 22 class, it appears as though they've got a staff that is younger and driven and energetic and can build those relationships with the kids, but they're not getting the job done thus far. That's it, D-Rock Irish right there. And again, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution coming in from Mower Man USA. But D-Rock Irish, that's exactly it. You've got to be relentless and you have to continually follow up. You have to find that sweet spot. This is where it takes some emotional intelligence, let's say, because your approach is probably going to be, you're going to have a standard approach. It's almost like teaching a class. You're going to have a standard approach that should work for 80% of the people. That just, communicating clearly, being organized, doing all the right things is going to reach most of them and be fine. But then if you have individual concerns or students that aren't learning, then you have to figure out why. You have to figure out what do they respond to. Well, with these student athletes, you have to relate to them as people and understand that some of them would love to hear from you every day or every other day. And some of them, that's a little much. You're bothering me. I like your school. This is cool. I'm interested. Leave me alone a little bit. And just be able to let them know, hey, we're here. We're here to talk. We're here to give you information. We're here to explain as much as possible, answer questions. But we got the vibe from this student athlete. They want constant contact, and I can send them memes and I can joke with them and I can whatever. And this one, it's different. Got to gauge what relates to and what will make the connection with each individual. Eric is telling us Notre Dame is the pretty girl at the bar that's only there for free drinks. They aren't going home with anyone. The longer this drags, the more that those odds are working in your favor, Eric, in being right. Notre Dame did not jump on the Big Ten's offer. That could have been announced. They could have had a workable plan, to dot all the I's and cross all the T's legally. That takes weeks. But they could have had a announcement, a plan in place. If Notre Dame was like, man, do we want to be in the Big Ten? Yeah. They obviously don't really want to be in the Big Ten. They might be convinced to be in the Big Ten. They could watch my video and certainly be convinced that they should be in the Big Ten. So Tim is asking, I think between USC and Notre Dame, I wonder what happens to the rivalry if you guys balk, meaning Notre Dame. I don't think that the Big Ten is going to put pressure on USC to drop Notre Dame. I think that they know not to go there. They're happy to have USC. I made the point, as did Kevin Noon on our Buckeye show today, that I would, if I was the rest of the Power 5 or whatever it turns out to be, the Power 3 or 4, I would freeze out Notre Dame. I just would. Sorry, D-Rock Irish. And that's not Notre Dame's. What Notre Dame is doing is none of it's their fault. They are standing by their principles and what is best for them. They are doing what's best for them. Nobody is forcing them. Nobody has forced Notre Dame to do what is best for the rest of college football. I would try to build, you talk about an alliance. This would be an alliance based on only one point, that and the more and more this progresses and involves more realignment and more expansion, the more this becomes about the college football playoff, and that's where the money's generated. These conferences will become, it seems, more uniform in how they schedule, in how they format their leagues to determine a champion. Then they're obviously going to cooperate to build a new playoff system. And there is one Notre Dame. This is in 1990. For you younger people, realize like in 1990, if we were in 1990, South Carolina was independent. Miami, Florida State, Syracuse, West Virginia, Penn State, Boston College, Louisville. They're all independents. There's tons of independents that were. It's not 1990 anymore because these conferences determined that, okay, we can go get some valuable, and really the Big Ten was the first to go out and get Penn State and say, wow, Penn State's amazing. They're a great commodity. And Penn State also looked at the Big Ten and said, man, they're going to take care of us. And we get that buffer, we get that shell of protection, and they negotiate all our TV and we make more money. And we have all these partnerships. It works all around. So these programs started to get gobbled up by conferences, except for Notre Dame, because they had enough history, brand equity, all of it, money, resources, facilities, and maybe a mission and purpose even beyond that was stronger than the other teams, the other programs, to make it on their own. But now we've come to a point where if the entire nation is going to be under the same structure, conferences, divisions, all agreeing on a playoff, and that playoff is going to have a structure of you have to win a conference to receive a bye, for example. Well, Notre Dame is completely outside that structure. So if I'm the conferences, I say, Notre Dame, we're making our last offer. Join the conference of your choice. Now, see, if we had a college football commissioner / governing body, then they could make this clear to Notre Dame. But now Notre Dame's just a free agent out there that doesn't want to sign with a team. But if there was a governing body, they could go to Notre Dame and make it official and say, Notre Dame, this is your opportunity to join a conference. You can take your pick and we'll work around you. We'll negotiate. We would rather have you join, let's say, the Big Ten, but you'd rather be here or there. We can accommodate you and then bring you under the structure of the entire sport. But we don't have a commissioner or a governing body. That's why all this is a mess. And that's why we're going to have teams and programs, unless this works out perfectly. And I don't see it happening that way unless this works out perfectly to where the ACC's spared and the Big 12 spared and the Pac-12 gobbles up a couple Mountain West teams and they survive. And that's just not going to happen because there's just too much going on out there that you're going to have your casualties. You're going to have your casualties because every conference is working on its own behalf. If we had a commissioner or a governing body, they could pull it all together and they could save the Wake Forests and the Texases and the Washington States and Oregon States of the world. Web security, Tim Brando says Pac-12 and ACC are most vulnerable. Well, that's a correct statement. It's didn't take a whole lot of insight to make that statement. Yes, the Pac-12 is the most vulnerable by far. The Pac-12 doesn't have Florida State, Miami, Clemson, etc. The Pac-12 has its schools practically publicly applying for other conferences. It's top two schools left, you could argue, Oregon and Washington applying to the Big Ten after they lost arguably their top two schools already, USC and UCLA. So the Pac-12 in that statement is by far the most vulnerable. The Pac-12 cannot survive as a football conference as it currently stands, as a power conference. The ACC is vulnerable because it's possibly going to get picked apart in two directions. Big Ten going after North Carolina, Virginia, possibly Georgia Tech, and then the SEC going after the Florida schools and Clemson. So that's not necessarily a statement of enlightenment. It's pretty obvious to all of us. The Big 12, again, it's not in great shape. It's not 100% bulletproof, protected, secure, but it's a 12-team league, and the Big 12 almost almost in a sense is better protected by not being as good, because I don't think that those programs are going to be valued enough to be plucked away by others. So they're just under the bar of the Big Ten and the SEC to keep Baylor and TCU and Oklahoma State and Kansas State. But together, the Big 12 can attack this from a number standpoint. They can just gobble up decent mid-level football programs and build a monstrosity. That's what I would do if I was the Big 12. Target number one, Oregon and Washington. If they turn me down, and even if they don't turn me down, even if we get Oregon and Washington, then it would be easier to get Utah and Colorado and Arizona State. And I made this statement the other day, and a couple people thought it might be a bit foolish. And I didn't say this is a certainty, but based on the level of the football program, the university, academically, and the market size, I also said that the Big 12 could look at SMU. And the Pac-12, if it tries to survive, should be looking at San Diego State and at Fresno State. And then our guy, Tony Altimore, backed me up to say that those were the two best programs out there on that side of the country in the group of five to look at. Market size, quality of the programs, the academics are better than they've been. Shadyville, I guess theoretically the schools in the ACC and the Pac-12 who don't bring much to the table are the real vulnerable ones. Washington State, Oregon State, exactly. BC, though, with the academic piece, there are university presidents and board of regents and chancellors making these decisions. And the football speaks to them in terms of this. But the academics at some of these schools dwarfs the football. College football journeys. We try to rein this back into a Michigan show, of course, but I'm going to respond to whatever you guys have. And we did talk Michigan recruiting and the Big Ten college football odds. If you're just joining us, we did lay out the odds for the Big Ten season, and I gave you my thoughts on what that tells us right there. But College Football Journey says Michigan has gone from a winning record versus every Big Ten team to now every Big Ten team except one. Name that team. Well, it's obviously not Ohio State. And Michigan just lost to Michigan State this year, but they have a winning record against Michigan State for sure. You're telling me that Michigan has a losing record against only one Big Ten team. So I'm going two different directions. It's either got to be a great team all time, or it's got to be a team that has a it's got to be a team that's only joined the conference recently. So they've only played them a few times. Well, the easiest guess, or the most obvious to me, would be Nebraska. Penn State lost the game against Michigan this past year. That series is close. I got to think Penn State and Michigan is close. Let's see. But my guess is going to be Nebraska. So let's look at Nebraska first. This one makes the most sense. Michigan 6, Nebraska 4. And of course, they won last year. All right. Michigan and Penn State. Going to guess that Michigan has a slight lead on Penn State since Penn State joined the Big Ten. I don't know that they would have played much before that. Michigan leads 15-10. And they had not played before. Michigan and Penn State never played before Penn State joined the Big Ten in 93. So it's 15-10, Michigan, Penn State. Okay. That's pretty good to Michigan's credit right there. 15 out of 25, because Penn State was really good from the time they joined the Big Ten until the early to mid 2000s. And really, even past that, they had a couple down years in 03, 04, 01, in that range. And then after Joe Paul left, of course, the scandal and Bill O'Brien brought them back, and they were okay. But really, Michigan, I would guess that this would be a close call. Who's got a better record since Penn State joined the Big Ten, Penn State or Michigan? All right. Our time is running out, surprisingly. We've got Florida State coming up at 6. We've got a great Florida State show coming up on both the main channel and the Florida State channel. We're simulcasting, but we've got a great Florida State show. Then at 7, our Miami show, we got Tony Altimore on to really dive into the metrics on Miami football. Fan base, TV, academics, all of it. Oh, okay. Okay. I wasn't thinking about the new teams. That would have been an obvious one. USC's got a winning record against everybody. That would have been an obvious one. Michigan's lost so many Rose Bowls to USC. Shoot, my goodness. They lost in 69, 77, 78. They lost in 89. They lost in 03 and 06. There's 6 Rose Bowls to USC right there. Yeah, I should have been able to figure out the angle on that one. It was obviously with and I'm trying to think. Of course, Michigan lost to UCLA in the Rose Bowl in 83. 82. That was 1 year after they beat UCLA in the Blue Bonnet Bowl, and they played some home and home series in the 80s. Yeah, let's see USC. I bet they've got a big lead on Michigan, except maybe going way back. Why didn't that update? (6-4) USC. Yeah, they won the last 2. They won the Rose Bowl. They won the last 3. Michigan beat them in Bo's second to last season. Then they beat USC beat Michigan in Bo's last game. All right. Yes, remember it all well. I should have been able to pick that one apart. Wasn't thinking. Expansion. The league just expanded. Who just came in? USC. Exploring with Ben and Sam. Appreciate you being here. Join the Discord, everyone. Chat with us 24/7. Join Mark on the Patreon. So you go to Patreon. Here's the deal. And then I got to run to Florida State. Go to Patreon. Search Mark Rogers TV. You sign up there. That's what you do. Patreon.com. Search Mark Rogers TV. I get you the link. I will send you a welcome email with a nice little plaque, nice little certificate. And you sign up there. I get you the link. You're ready to go on Discord. You can do what you're doing here with the live chat 24/7, 365. And these guys also have after show parties, and it's amazing. And you'll get my picks coming up in like 7 weeks. I will start delivering winners, hopefully. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here. We're starting up our Florida State show. What do we got? Spark CW. Mark, You should consider making a free limited access tier for the Discord. Okay, too many things for me to consider right now. Okay, Florida State live at 6. That means right now. See you in a few.